Kerry, welcome to Shifting Culture. Excited to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm delighted to be here.
What drew you to becoming a gerontologist? Why gerontology for you?
It started the minute I was born because my mom and dad had high school students and my brother and sister, and they thought they were done. And then my mom said she wasn't feeling well, went to the doctor to talk about menopause, and it turned out she was pregnant with me.
Mm,
So when I was born, my dad had gray hair already. And when people would talk about older people in a derogatory way, as people do, it always felt personal. And
mm.
so I feel so grateful, that God led me on this path to get to work with and learn from older people all these years.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that you felt a draw to that. For me, a few years ago, I went to a hotel with my wife and son, and the person checking me in was like, "Are you traveling with your daughter and grandson?" I was like, I'm not that old yet, but I do have a lot of gray hair. So, but thank you for recognizing that. For me, growing up, my mom was a home health aide. She was a physical therapist, so she went to people that were aging, having mobility issues, and helping them out. And so I have been drawn to what does actually life look like at an older age, where it looks like you could actually have some purpose and love and life. You wrote this great book, Joyspan, and helping people get to a place in their latter years to a place of joy. Talk about joy span and not lifespan or just longevity of living longer, but actually the quality of life.
I love that question. So the reason I wrote the book is that for 18 years, I was a professor in geriatric medicine, and I was working with older adults. And we created an elder abuse forensic center of people who had endured financial exploitation and physical abuse,
Mm,
psychological abuse. So basically, I was surrounded with suffering. And what I saw really burned my eyes. And
yeah.
you get to thinking, rather than just sort of remediating these situations, how could we prevent this suffering? How
Mm,
could we prevent people ending up alone, hunched over in wheelchairs, being taken advantage of? And so it really took my career the opposite direction. And so I just dug into the research to find out what is it that enables some people to absolutely thrive in old age, and how can we all be doing this and starting early. And in terms of in the popular culture, it's longevity, and
yeah.
that lifespan. And lifespan is how many years you live. And that's great. We want to live long lives. And then more recently, our field has moved toward health span, how many years you can live in good health. And that is definitely in the right direction. And yet, I would see people who lived a long time, people who even were in good physical health, who are miserable.
Yeah.
And so what joy span is joy span is the quality of your long life.
Mm,
So basically we want all three: a long lifespan, a long health span, and a long joy span. And it isn't just luck, and it is certainly not just genes. People are always so quick to blame genes, but it's in fact less
yeah.
than 25% of the variability. So, what is it that enables us to have a long quality of life? And
Mm.
that is what the book's about.
So joy span, how does joy span and cultivating joy, purpose through, the things that you have studied and you write about in your book? How does that help longevity? How does it help with even the other things with health and long life?
Yes. So, I love your question because joy span increases your lifespan and your health span. So happily, all those three go together. So it's not like, oh, do the things that you do that are good. And these practices improve your life between ages, say, 23 and 24, in the same way they improve your life between 93 and 94. So when
Mm,
people, I wonder, like, who is this book for? Is this book for older people? No, it's for anybody who's aging. And who is aging?
All
Everyone
of
who's
us.
alive. And the reason we call it joy, joy is not the same as happiness. So
Yeah.
happiness is often dependent on external circumstances. Joy isn't, because joy is something that comes from within us. And so joy is much more like contentment than it
Mm,
is ecstasy. And
yeah.
so what we're not talking about is toxic positivity or like it's more of this feeling of well-being, life satisfaction, contentment.
Mm.
And it really is possible to increase and put yourself on a different path to be one of those person who loves their life all the way to the end.
Yeah, let's get into some of these ways that we could cultivate joy and joy span. But first, I have a question. We have a bunch of billionaires right now that are talking about transhumanism. They're talking about becoming more than human so that I could extend my life and maybe we could be better. How does contentment happen as humans? How do we stay human and content? Because I don't want to be more than human. I want to be human. This is how I was created. This is who I am. Where does contentment happen as a human? What does it really mean to be human?
Yes. Oh, I love that. So there is a significant movement and billions of dollars dedicated to anti aging.
Yep.
And so that we're somehow, if we have enough money, going to be able to not age, not die. There's even a Don't Die Summit where people, from all over are heading to San Francisco and other places to follow Brian Johnson's Don't Die movement. And he's a person who's spending millions and millions of dollars in all these supplements and things to try to not die. And what I, as a gerontologist, would say to that is that I find it sad because everyone that I have ever known, that you have ever known, if you're lucky, you grow old and we die in the same way that we're born. And so to somehow have the opposite of humility, to think that there's something that we
Mm,
can pay for or do to make that not the case. And I think that is actually misery and suffering, to be on a quest for something that
mm,
is not possible. And even if it was possible, would we want that? Like, the
yeah.
world can only sustain so many people, and to be living these ultra, to be striving to live two or three
Mm,
hundred years, like what? I sometimes think, I don't, have you thought this through? So I think to be human is to recognize that we come into the world, it's a pretty messy way by ourselves
yeah.
without anything. And we are supposed to leave this physical world in a way that sometimes is messy and often
Mm,
by ourselves. And there's great beauty in that
mm,
acceptance.
yeah. So then what does contentment look like? One of the things you just said there is people are striving towards anti-aging or not dying. They're striving for something. So they're never going to be content with what they have because they're always looking for something they don't have.
Yes.
How do we cultivate and become content with who we are and where we're going?
Yes. So the reason that the pull of anti aging is so strong is because people are proactively feeding us the message that getting older is bad and ugly and less than and undesirable. And the reason that they're using fear is because it sells, and they're making so much money off of our
Yeah.
fear and our feeling badly about ourselves. And so the way that you get out of the
Mm,
crux of this is understanding, what does the research say about growing older. And what you'll find is that many things get better as you get older, but they're
yeah.
not publicized because it's not lucrative to tell people
Mm,
what gets better as you get older.
yeah.
So one example is, as we grow older, we don't care as much what other people think about us, and it enables us to become more authentically who we are and who we are
Mm,
intended to be. It's
mm,
really liberating. And, I'm only 55 and I'm starting to enjoy that now. And it makes me excited to be 75, 85, 95. And other things that get better as you get older, there's greater humility,
mm,
there's greater access to or appreciation of spirituality. There's really profound problem solving that's based on wisdom based experience.
Mm,
There's appreciation for friendship and connection. And these things are wonderful things. And research shows that our well being and satisfaction often gets, there's a U shaped curve of happiness where we do enjoy this time of life, but you
mm,
don't hear much about it. So I think contentment is seeing the lies that we've been told about older, about stepping into older. And don't ever, if you ever catch yourself saying, oh, I'm having a senior moment, or oh, I'm looking old, or oh gosh, these wrinkles on my neck, don't contribute to it. I mean,
yeah.
let's each stand up for our own beautiful, radiant old. And so if somebody
Mm,
says, like, wow, you're old. Like, yes, I am. Or if they say, like, for example, my mom is 96 and she's just thriving. And when people say you don't look 96, what we've discussed for that she says is this is what 96 looks like. You know, it looks different for everybody. And I don't want to be young. I've already been every other age. So
mm,
for contentment, it is accepting ourselves and stepping into this new, older version of ourselves.
mm. So if you said that we could start some of this process of cultivating joy and having joy span and like when we're 23, when we're younger, as we age, we are going to continue this and continue to grow and adapt and connect and all those things. What are the steps that you have found in your research that help us cultivate that joy in life that provide a longer joy span?
Okay, so it takes work. So that's number one. It doesn't just happen. So sometimes you'll see a physically fit person, and then we who have not worked out would say, oh, you're just so lucky. Well, that person has likely put in the time and the
Yeah.
work. So if we use the physical analogy first, so physically, in order to have our physical fitness, there are four things that we do. And so we do aerobic activity for our heart, we do
Hmm.
strength training for our muscles, we do flexibility training so we can continue to walk and move without discomfort, and we do agility training, move your feet quickly and work on balance. Great. We kind of know that and we get inundated with all the information. It's great. But now it's the inside work. So the inside work also is four things. Also action verbs,
Mm,
also daily practice. And so those four things that I call the Joyspan matrix are four verbs. And so the first is grow. You got to continue to keep growing. And that means doing hard things, getting out of your comfort zone, deciding, what is it that I would like to pursue or be interested in or do something about? It's really exploring our curiosity and making an active, if we're not growing, there's a problem. So we need to
yes.
put the work into it. So that's number one, grow.
Okay. Yeah.
Number two is connect. We know there's just an overwhelming literature in the importance of human connection. Even for us introverts, everyone needs to connect. And
Yeah.
if you put your friendships on autopilot, you're putting yourself in a bad place. Because if we live long enough, we often outlive our friends, or friends move, or friends get cognitive
Mm,
impairment. So we need to be actively what I call cultivating our social portfolio. So, with your financial portfolio, you don't put money all in one place. Same thing socially. Socially, we need to have friends of different ages, friends with different outlooks, friends who are neighbors, friends that we have known 30 years, friends that we've known
mm,
30 minutes. So
yep.
actively connecting. And
Hmm.
you need to be the one to make the call, to reach out, to send the text, to remember birthdays.
Mm,
Whenever I encounter patients who are lonely, they complain that nobody is reaching out to them. And we
right.
know right away what the problem is. If you're going to have friends, you've got to be that friend that drives you to a chemo appointment, that friend who is sitting by the
Yes.
bed when you're crying. You got to be
Yes.
that friend. So we got first you grow,
Mm.
Second, you connect. Ready for number three? You
Yes.
adapt.
Mm.
The one thing I know for sure that as we get older, we are all going to have challenges. I've never met anyone who has made it through life who hasn't had some rough stuff. And it
Yeah.
gets more rough as you get older, right?
Mm.
We live long enough, we are very likely to outlive our spouse if unless we're the
Yep.
ones to pass away first.
Yeah.
So we are very likely to get a diagnosis that we never expected. We are very likely to have, know, for example, my retina detached and I lost vision
Mm.
entirely in one eye and then it started detaching on the other. And
Wow.
as I was going through all these surgeries, at first I thought, oh, this isn't right. And then I thought, no, it is right. You're a human. All humans have things.
Yeah.
This is your thing. How are you going to adapt and
Mm.
say, like, yeah, I can't see. I wear an eye patch. That's okay. Um, and it isn't denial. It is saying, yeah, this is hard. And I can choose to
Mm.
sit in it and suffer, or I can choose to do the hard work of adapting and finding a way through these challenges.
Yeah.
So we got grow, connect, adapt, and the final one, and perhaps my favorite, is give.
Mm.
So we need to make sure that all lifelong we are able to keep giving of ourselves. So the low hanging fruit is you think of monetary contribution, like what can I give money wise? Yes, very few people are in a situation to do that. And if you can, lovely. But many of us, what we have is time. What we have is experience. What we have is we can listen, we can laugh, we can
Mm.
pick lemons from our yard and bring them to our next door neighbor. We can go to the other neighbor who seems overwhelmed as a single mother and say, is there
Mm.
something that I can do around dinner time so that you can cook dinner and I could keep an eye on these babies, right?
Mm.
So, like
Yeah.
giving of yourself. And the research is staggering. People who give are not only making the world a better place, but incredibly enriched and live longer with lower inflammation, with less chronic disease. And it's what a win win. And isn't it what the
Mm.
world needs, right? Like,
Yes.
can you imagine if we would all step
Mm.
into our ability as older people to give, change the world?
A lot of what you just said seems to be counter to a lot of American culture of individualism, of like doing something by yourself, of not wanting to be dependent on other people. It just seems to be like we have to do this work of countering some of this culture that's ingrained within us as we grow and we age, where we are like we're productive machines. We have to figure out what it looks like to like be content, be human, and connect with each other. One of the connections that you were talking about, so I just jump into connect and adapt. And both of those things I think can go hand in hand, especially when you're dealing with loss. So the adaptation of loss when you're going through grief, and then the connection that's really important. How do we help people move through those transition times? And how can we move through those transition times to be healthy on the other side that actually cultivates joy and not bitterness when you say, all my friends are gone, like people are dying around me, like my husband, my wife has died. I don't have my spouse anymore. What does that look like to help people through transition moments like that?
I think the first step is a little pre planning, right? I think
Mm.
the recognition that these things will happen. I think denying or acting like I'm not going to think about that because it's a downer to think that way is a little dangerous and also very common. So a lot of times I'll talk to people and think like, I never thought that my spouse would die. And I think it's a little bit of a shame because 100% we are going to die and 100%
Mm.
our spouse is going to die.
Yeah.
So it's going to either be one or the other. Like it is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that it's easy, but I just think step one would be this is real. This is going to happen. There will be a diagnosis sometime that I'll go, whoa, huh? Like Parkinson's, or like, wow, I did
Yeah.
not know that was going to be my path, that I was going to be blind. So that's step one, is the recognition that it is normal
Mm.
to have these things happen to you. It is expected. So sometimes I call it the unexpected, no, the expected surprise, or it is going to happen. But then when it does happen, right, it hurts.
Mm. Yeah.
And grief is very real, and is something that we embrace, and is something that we give people time and space, and know that tears are good,
Mm.
and everybody, there's no right way to do it.
Yeah.
And feeling what you feel and giving people time to feel what they feel, and not getting rid of phrases like, well, at least blah blah blah, right? If I
Hmm.
never hear anyone say at least whatever, I'll give an example of our daughter, whose medical school was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Mm.
And it was not, I had not taken my own advice to understand that things also will happen
Yeah.
to our children and to our grandchildren, right?
Mm.
That's part
Yeah.
of the human experience as well. So I had to add that to my thought of like, of course, anything can happen to anyone. But when
Mm.
people, and it was a tumor that ultimately it grows, could be fatal. And so people would say, well, at least, it's not cancer. It's like, you know, yeah, I mean, kind of, but not really. So I think giving people space for grief, and knowing
Mm.
that it, we can succumb to it and embrace grief as part of the human experience. And I
Mm.
think people of faith then also can turn to God and go, I'm going to feel this, and I'm going
Yeah.
to cry and do things that I need to do to go through, but there is a through.
Mm.
So over time, grief transforms. It doesn't go away, but we carry it a little bit differently over
Yeah.
time, right? So the person that you are missing so much, often I hear people saying that they become a part of you, right? And you carry them, whereas it used to hurt so much. It's a sort of a change, and knowing that
Mm.
with time doesn't heal all things, but time does change the way that we carry grief.
Yeah. So as you deal with patients and you're walking with older people, how do you deal with mindset issues and mindset shifts? I know that a lot of people deal with physical shifts, and this is how we can move our bodies and continue to have mobility as we grow older. But what does it look like to deal with mindset shifts?
The mind is so powerful, as you know. And so the aging mindset that we currently have as a default is the decline aging mindset, which has a
Right.
great acronym of DAM. So and it started when we were first born. So
Mm.
when we were little, our parents would read us stories and say, there was Hansel and Gretel, and they were walking, and then an old woman called them into her house, and she had a horrible warty nose, and then she was going to eat them. I mean, that's what we teach people what aging is. And so I think recognizing, my default is probably a decline aging mindset.
Mm.
And we know that what we expect, the whole manifesting literature, what you expect, generally that comes to pass. So that's bad. So by recognizing, I'm going to consciously reject the decline aging mindset, and I am going to embrace and create on purpose a
Mm.
growth aging mindset. And you'd have to add an E on the end, but it could be from damn to game. And
Yeah.
growth aging mindset is saying, there are things that I'm going to get better at as I get older. I am going to work on things that I would care about people saying at my funeral, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody ever said, wow, that Joshua really drives a nice car. They never said, oh my goodness, I'm so impressed by his clean garage. But people will remember forever the listening that you provided, or the insight, or the kindness, or
Mm.
the little things that you did. So we all have so much opportunity to grow in the stuff that
Mm.
matters. And I am so rewarded by watching my patients in their 80s, 90s, and 100s grow beyond anything they were when they were
Mm.
younger. And they just inspire me so much.
So then, uh, can you give me an example? What's the story of somebody growing in a place of saying, I'm gonna resist this mindset. I'm gonna get into my game mindset, not my damn mindset.
Yes.
What's a good story to help us know what does it look like to grow? And I know it's different for every individual, but
I love
yeah.
concrete examples. So I can tell you about an example of an 84-year-old woman who I know well and love. And when she lost her husband, had been a person who had never considered the possibility of walking through life without her love, her partner, her best friend of 60 years.
Yeah.
And she, in the beginning, said, "What's left for me now? I don't, he paid all the bills, he planned all the trips, he's who I talked to in the morning and who I said my prayers with at night. What's left for me? I don't really even want to keep living because,
Mm,
this isn't life." Right? That's a decline aging mindset, right? Of just
yeah.
saying, like, let me just hang it up here. She, with time, thought, I'm going to have this extra time, this bonus time, and it can be filled with all suffering and lamenting at what I lost. Or what if I thought, well, what the heck? I'm going to use this bonus time. So, what she did, she was a retired school teacher. And so she contacted the school that she had worked at
Mm,
and asked if there were any um, paid or unpaid positions that she could do on a part time basis. And the school was elated because she was a reading specialist and there were so many students that could use the one on one time. Well, she became the most beloved person at that school. And as she, all the way through, I mean, she's continuing on now, still in her 90s, she
mm,
is important to the students, so important to the other
mm,
teachers, so important to the families of the students, that she said, I never thought that this could be one of the best times of my life. And if my husband could see me now, he would be so proud. My kids are proud. And I'm grateful. And I thought,
yeah.
wow, if you can go from not wanting to live to the best time of your life by
Mm,
making a choice of what older could look like, sign me up.
yeah. That's beautiful. And that's purpose there. That's giving back. That's connecting with people. There's adapting to the change of loss, giving of time and energy, like giving back, like all of these
It's all of them.
aspects,
And
all
I
of them together.
exactly. And I do notice that, like, so often when somebody starts on one area, it ends up all four of those. And I love
Yeah.
that you touched on purpose. And I think of purpose within the giving domain. And there's research out of UCLA by Stephen Cole looking at the epigenetics of purpose. And epigenetics is how genes are expressed. So you can think of genes as a piano keyboard. Just because you have a gene for something, it's
Mm,
just having the piano key. It's only when the gene is expressed where you press the piano key.
uh-huh.
And he looked at a whole bunch of different variables of what might predict certain genes being expressed. And he kind of threw purpose in there as, like, well, maybe. It ended up being one of the very top variables. And that is people who expressed that I have a purpose for my life had lower inflammation and higher antiviral response than those who didn't once you control for all other variables. So,
Wow.
scientifically, if we could bottle purpose in a
Mm,
tablet, it would be the next Ozempic. But
yeah.
instead, purpose is something that doesn't cost anything except
Mm,
your work and your decision that
yeah.
you are going to serve. So, the first step is, how can I get outside of myself and how can I serve? And that mindset shift is the powerful change to sort of launch you toward your purpose.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to some people that I know that have retired and saying my purpose was my work, whatever I was doing, and now I'm retired and they're trying to figure out what's next. What is my purpose? What do you have any advice for people that are trying to discover what's next for them, knowing that it's not just your career, but there's something greater and bigger as a purpose? How do we start to discover that when
I
things
love
have
that you
lost?
say that. So, in my book, Joyspan, I created a lot of joy practices and a lot of inventories because,
Yeah.
like, so that we can do the work. And one of the inventories I have that pertains to purpose starts with curiosity. And curiosity can be a little catalyst of, where might I dive
Yeah.
in this new phase of life? And so go through and you just there's all these different things of photography or coding computers or interior design or children or people with disabilities or um, atmospheric pressure. I mean, beer brewing. I mean, there's just endless. So once you kind of let yourself,
Mm.
without judging, without thinking, how will I implement this? Just what sparks my curiosity? So you go through the inventory, and then anything that you can think of, there are people and groups and organizations and all these wonderful
Yeah.
ways to connect with other people who are interested. And so one, for example, online is called Meetup. It's just a group of people who meet up, like, hey, let's meet up and we'll talk about books from the 16th century. There are just so many meetup groups.
Yeah.
And also there are things at our libraries and churches and community centers and hospitals.
Mm.
And if it doesn't exist and you have identified a curiosity, you can be the one to start that. And I've seen so many people start things up, and you start with just one other person, and like before you know it, you've started this whole thing where people all over the place are in the bird watching club, and then
Mhm.
making friendships, and then maybe donating money to do a bird sanctuary preserve. Like it's all tiny, tiny starter steps.
Yeah, that's good. Tiny starter steps. And I think even before we believe that in your late 70s, 80s, 90s, this is this aging process. But as we're aging early on, I think hobbies are really important to start and
Yes,
to know where your curiosity leads you, what is going on. I know so many people that it's just work is 100% of their life and then a little bit for their family, and they're done. They don't even know who they are.
yes.
And so, how do we start early having this sense of curiosity?
I know. I don't have what the word should be, but I have a dream that the word hobbies could be elevated to something else, because my
Yeah.
sense is that hobbies feels like that's just a hobby, like it's not important or something.
Yeah.
But it's actually like life projects, or
Mm.
you know they
Yeah.
matter so much, because that's what the spark of life. And again, your funeral, they're probably not going to say, wow, Carrie was so great in insurance sales, but they're going to say, oh man, she used to carve these things, or she would get out and tap dance over in the back of her garage, or she would
Yeah.
have kids come into her thing and she would read them stories. Like it,
Mm.
the hobbies are your life, these life projects. And
Mm.
I think kind of like we need to kiss a lot of frogs. So
Yeah.
I have a dream of being able to play the guitar. And so I purchased a really crummy, inexpensive guitar, and I had a friend for free teach me some chords. And every time I would look back, my fingers would move, and I was just horrible at it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, don't think you're not musical. You just, okay, that was step one. Okay, maybe your fingers have a little bit of an issue. Like, let's try a different musical instrument, or let's try something different. But at least, like, I hear that you want to do music. Maybe you could keep kissing frogs until you get one that sticks.
I love that. I think that's so good, because I think a lot of people they try something, go, oh, this isn't for me. They give up entirely and they don't kiss more frogs moving
Yes,
forward.
exactly. And be bad at something. Like the only way, I think being darn awful at something is a
Mm.
great, great thing for older us to be, because you get in a job, you get kind of like, oh, I know how to do this, la la la, and to get to that beginner's mindset again
Mm.
sometimes doesn't feel that good, but I think it is
Yep.
really good for us to stink at things.
Yeah. I mean, some people say, okay, I know, some people, their hobby, their life project, they want to hike, be in nature, be very active. When mobility issues start to hinder that and they're having something else, how do we cultivate joy without mobility? What does
Yeah.
that look like?
What a good question. Because so often we can't help but equate. Like, I, for example, used to run marathons, and talk about like releasing some good mojo. When you run that far and your face is caked with salt, you really feel great after you suffer. And so then after my knees gave out, which one's knees give out,
Yeah.
you think, oh, I can't run. And actually, my running group was my social group. So I met with the girls every morning and we'd talk about everything. So I didn't have the feel good hormones. I was left out of the social group and I didn't feel very accomplished. So the reality is to go again, make yourself say, you did that.
Mm,
And lucky you. There was a time where your knees did not hurt all the time, and that time is past. So
mm,
thank you that you had it. What's next? And so then you go, the pool. There are pools all over the place, and there are people in pools that you can get to be friends with. And if there isn't a class, you could start one. Walking. Walking is terrific. My mom, who's 96, can no longer walk, and that's a big transition
yeah.
for her because she started with running, couldn't run, then with walk, couldn't walk. Like, so it's get used to it, right? There's going to be
Yeah.
changes, and that's why your inside becomes even more important than your outside, because
Mm,
our inner richness of our depth and our humility and spirituality and humor and love of music, like these inside things become even more important, because we are going to lose some of the outside stuff regardless of all that we do. And
yeah.
so like when it comes, go, yes, I can no longer play pickleball, and
Yeah.
that is a shame. Now what's next?
Yeah. It's cultivation of adaptability and being adaptable. And there are some people that really, as one of their strengths, adaptability is very low on their strength.
Yes.
They want
That's a nice
consistency.
way
They
to
want the
say
same. Yes, it is. And so they get that. And so for people that have low adaptability and that they get very frustrated when there's change, and because when we age, there's going to be lots of change. What are some of the practices that you have laid out to help people with that change?
Yes. There are practices in the book, in that chapter of Joyspan, that I'm not immediately thinking of what they are. So I think I need to reread the book. But I think one of them is cultivating humility. And sometimes that's a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
Because again, like you said, our society, it preaches independence, which is actually a myth. In fact, we are interdependent. So we
Yeah.
have always needed people, and we will always need people. And that makes us human. And
Yeah.
there's a book that I love that I didn't write called The Dilemma of Dependency. And the author talks about, we as humans, we love to have that feeling of like, I'm the one helping you, and it
Yeah.
feels good to me to help you, which there's nothing wrong with it. But there's also something beautifully to be said for accepting help, because
Yeah.
it gives that other person that feeling of,
Mm,
so often
yeah.
people will say, like, I don't want to be a burden on my kids. I don't want my
Mm,
kids to help. I don't want whatever. You really think about it, there is a gift that you're giving to your
mm,
children and to others to say, thank you. Thank you very much for, maybe I'm not driving anymore and you're
mm,
offering that you would drive me to the supermarket. What if instead of saying, oh, I'm so mad and rigid and I love
mm,
to drive and I should be able to drive and I'm mad at you for thinking I can't drive. Instead of, what if we just said,
mm,
thank you for driving me to the market, you know,
Yeah.
and just like trying to think, are we actually being humble? Because humility is a softener of people and a
Mm,
softener to say, yeah, things have changed. And
yeah.
I'm not different than anybody else. And I
Mm,
shouldn't think I'm different than anybody else. I'm going to get sickness. I'm going to get mobility limitations. I'm going to lose my
mm.
spouse. Yes.
One of the things I learned is I worked with refugees, war refugees in the Middle East for a long time. And when I go into a place, I want to help. I want to give. I want to help. I want to give hospitality to other people. But one of the things that I learned is that I need to receive their hospitality. I need to be dependent upon war refugees that don't have much at all, but they have such a greater purpose. And there was a bigger connection when I received hospitality. And it was a hard lesson for me because I'm an independent. I want to help. I want to do the work for other people. I don't want anybody to do it for me. And so receiving hospitality is a huge, huge thing that we don't think about, especially Americans. And so I even want to redefine what hospitality looks like, which is receiving it from others and not just giving it and making everything, perfect in your home, but actually being a good guest with people.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I work with a lot of adult children, aging parents. And that mindset shift that you just alluded would make all the difference
Yeah.
because adult children want to rush in and they want to fix the situation and they want to, you can't do this, or you're doing that wrong, let me help, let me, like take the
Yeah.
phone out of somebody's hand and say I'm going to do it for you. And
Yeah.
so what you talked about is humbling ourselves to say, like, wow, let you can help me too. So I have
Yeah.
a patient who lives with Alzheimer's disease, and
Mm,
Alzheimer's disease takes a lot,
yeah.
and it doesn't take everything. And so our most rewarding interactions are when I bring her my authentic problems, and I'll say, you know, I'm having a challenge with, let's say, one of my adult children who maybe is doing something in a way different than I think
Mm,
they should. Like, what would you do in this situation? And this friend, she recently, this week, she said, I think maybe what you need to do is you need to zip it up. And I thought, wow, amid living with a disease process, she gave me the exact advice that I needed.
yeah.
And I did need to zip it up. And she was right. And
Mm,
so, like, she felt great about giving me advice, but I felt great taking the advice that I really needed to do. And it worked. I just,
yeah.
not your rodeo.
Yes, that's good. That's really good. Kerry, if you could talk to your readers that pick up Joyspan, what hope do you have for the readers of Joyspan?
Yes. So, my hope for each of you as readers is that you could put yourself on a path to longevity that is one that will enable you to thrive all life long. I'd love you to change your fear into hope. I'd love to change your shame about aging into acceptance. And in doing so, I think we could really change the way that society sees older people. And I think
Yeah.
it has to start with ourselves. Like,
Mm,
like othering is saying, oh, those old people. We, aging humans, we all aging, and 100-year-old is the inside the very same as a 20-year-old, just with more experience. So my dream is to make older better, one person at a time.
amen. That's a great dream. Let's make happen. Kerry, a couple really quick questions at the end. One, if you go back to your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give?
I would tell her to relax. you know, you got a lot of time, and there'll be a lot of ups and a lot of downs. You don't need to white knuckle it so much. Open your hands up and like, oh, that would have been better for her.
That's good. That's good. Anything you've been reading or watching lately you could recommend?
That is a great question. When you are in a book launch period, you don't get to read or watch much of anything else. So you get really kind of insular. But I think like what comes to mind is a book that I really, really, really love and recommend, which is called Write a Must Read. And it's for anybody who has any interest in writing a book. I think that's a nice thing to do in our later years. And the book is primarily for people who are writing nonfiction books like I did, but it really every step of the way it helped me. Like, how do you get started? How do you do it? The author, I've gotten to know a little bit because I took a writing class with her, and her name's AJ Harper, and she is such a kind and good and brilliant soul. So I love the book Write a Must Read.
Excellent. Well, Joyspan is available anywhere books are sold. It's a fantastic read for me, working with aging people, or me as somebody that wants to cultivate joy in my life, so that when I am aging, I could actually give and connect and adapt and grow and become a person that has a long joy span in my life. This is a fantastic book. So people
Oh,
should
I'm
go and
grateful.
read the book and get the book and buy a bunch of copies for your friends and your family and everybody. Uh, Kerry, is there anywhere else that you would like to point people to?
Well, I want to tell you that I think you're really positioned for a long joy span, Joshua. So
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
you've got good news. And yeah, I would just point people to the recognition that there's a lot out there ahead, and that the older you is spectacular. And what you're doing today at age 30, at age 40, at age 70 is what predicts what older you is going to be like. So dive in.
Excellent. Kerry, thank you for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. The joy that you have exudes from you. And I just, I pray that it actually gets into other people, that they can just dive into these practices to help them cultivate a better life as they age, as they grow, that all of this joy leads into longevity, leads into health, and we can actually have some interdependence and some intergenerational connection with people, to value people as they go through an aging process, because we're all in the aging process ourselves. So thank you, Kerry. It was
Thank
fantastic.
you very much. Yeah, God wants that for us. And I really appreciate the work you're doing. And this Shifting Culture podcast means so much.
Thank you.